I stood at the county office window, waiting to pay my property tax. The clerk shuffled through my papers while I counted out exact change from my wallet. That's when I heard Tara's voice behind me, sharp and confident. "Excuse me," she said to the clerk, stepping beside me. "He's incompetent. I'll handle his money." The clerk looked up, confused. Tara held papers in her manicured hand like she owned them. Like she owned me. She wasn't talking about her fiancé Kevin, who stood behind us checking his phone. She was talking about me, her 72-year-old stepfather who'd raised her since she was 8. I kept my mouth shut. Didn't argue. Didn't explain that I'd been managing money since before she was born. The clerk glanced between us, uncertain. "Sir?" the clerk asked me directly. "I can handle it," I said quietly, placing my payment on the counter. Tara's smile tightened. She tucked her papers away with practiced patience, but I caught the flash of anger in her eyes. She thought I was being difficult, stubborn. She had no idea what she'd just revealed. As I walked out of that building, envelopes stamped and paid, I already knew where her arrogance would lead her. Just before you continue to watch, Joe would like you to subscribe to this channel and like this video. It would encourage him to keep his streak of thrilling revenge stories for you to watch. All right, back to the story. That evening, Tara poured wine at dinner. Too much wine. Too much smiling. She sat across from me at the oak table her mother and I had picked out 20 years ago, before cancer took Maria away. "Uncle Frank," she said, using the name she'd called me since childhood. "Have you thought about simplifying your accounts? I could help manage things." I cut my pot roast carefully. "Manage what things?" "You know, bills, investments. It's a lot to keep track of at your age." She leaned forward, voice dropping to a whisper meant to sound caring. "I'll take care of everything when you can't." Kevin nodded along, scrolling his phone. He always agreed with whatever Tara wanted. I laughed, but inside I marked her words down, filed them away like evidence. She'd shown her hand twice in one day. At the county office, she'd been bold. Here, she was being careful, testing the waters. "I appreciate the offer, sweetheart," I said, "but I'm managing fine." Her jaw tightened for just a second. Then the smile returned, bright as fresh paint over rust. That was her mistake. She thought I was just some confused old man who'd be grateful for her help. She didn't know she'd just accepted my challenge. That night, I stayed up late, spread papers across the kitchen table under the old fluorescent light. Deeds to the house. Life insurance policies. Bank statements going back 5 years. Investment accounts Maria and I had built together, dollar by dollar. Nothing was missing yet, but I found things that shouldn't be there. Credit inquiries under my name from banks I'd never contacted. Someone had been phishing, checking my worth. I pulled out my reading glasses and studied the dates. All recent. All within the last 3 months, right around when Tara got engaged to Kevin. Right around when she started talking about wedding costs and down payments for houses. She wasn't waiting for me to get sick or confused. She was already pushing, already testing how far she could reach into my business. I organized everything into neat stacks. Property, investments, personal accounts, insurance. Each pile represented years of careful saving, of Maria and I planning for retirement, for emergencies, for the family we'd built. The clock on the kitchen wall ticked past midnight. Outside, spring rain tapped against the windows. I smiled in the empty house. The deeper she dug, the harder she'd fall. At Murphy's Diner the next morning, I ordered my usual coffee and scrambled eggs. The waitress, Carol, knew my order by heart after 15 years of Tuesday breakfasts. "Frank," called a voice from the next booth. It was Nancy Wilson, who worked as a teller at First National Bank. "How are you holding up?" I turned in my seat. Nancy had been Maria's friend from church. Good woman. Honest. "Can't complain," I said. "Coffee's still hot." She laughed. Then her expression grew serious. "Frank, I probably shouldn't mention this, but your daughter came by the bank yesterday asking about your accounts." My coffee cup stopped halfway to my lips. "My daughter? Well, she called herself that. Pretty girl with dark hair? Said she was checking on her father's accounts because you'd been forgetful lately." Tara had called me father. To a bank employee. Made it sound official, legitimate. Bold. Too bold. "What did you tell her?" I asked. "Nothing, of course. Privacy rules." "But Frank." Nancy leaned closer. "She seemed to know an awful lot about your business for someone just checking up." I nodded, thanked her, left a good tip. Outside the diner, I stood in the morning sun and felt something shift inside my chest. If Tara was willing to lie to bank staff, she'd overreach. Make mistakes. I knew I could use that. And I already had the perfect place to set the trap. Mr. Dillard's law office smelled like leather and old books. I'd sat in the same chair across from his desk when Maria and I wrote our wills, when we set up the trust after her diagnosis. Frank, he said, reviewing the notes I'd brought him. If she's already trying to establish incompetence, we need to move now. He pulled out forms I'd never seen before. Trust modifications. New account structures. Power of attorney transfers. We'll shift the major assets into an irrevocable trust. Your cousin Michael in Detroit can hold power of attorney. She seems trustworthy. Michelle, I corrected. And yes, she is. Within 2 hours, we'd reorganized everything. New accounts. New trustees. New beneficiaries. The house would stay in my name for now, but everything else was protected. Most importantly, Mr. Dillard said as I signed the final papers, don't let her know you know what she's planning. Act normal. Let her keep digging. That evening, I offered Tara a piece of apple pie at the dinner table. Homemade, with cinnamon just like Maria used to make. She smiled while eating it, completely unaware she'd just lost access to every dollar she'd been counting. Sunday brunch at the Riverside Cafe. Tara insisted on treating, which meant she wanted something. She ordered mimosas and eggs Benedict, expensive for someone who supposedly worried about my finances. Her phone rang halfway through the meal. She answered it on speaker, not bothering to excuse herself. Kelly? Oh good, you called back. Tara's friend from college, if I remembered right. Everything's moving along perfectly here. Should have it all tied up within a month. I stirred cream into my coffee, kept my expression blank. Really? Kelly's voice crackled through the speaker. That's faster than you thought. Well, the situation's gotten clearer. More obvious, you know? I won't have to wait as long as I expected. She was bragging. Actually bragging about taking control of my assets while I sat 3 feet away. She thought I hadn't heard, or hadn't understood, or was too polite to object. I took another sip of coffee. She was celebrating while the floor was already sliding out from under her feet. All I needed now was for her to take one more reckless step. I started leaving my car keys on the kitchen counter instead of hanging them on the hook. Asked Tara to repeat herself when she gave me directions to the grocery store, even though I'd been shopping at the same Safeway for 20 years. She perked up like a bird spotting something shiny. See? She whispered to Kevin after I asked her to write down the pharmacy's phone number. This is exactly what I mean. I nodded along when she suggested I might want to get checked out by a doctor. Mentioned that I'd forgotten to turn off the coffee pot twice last week, which was true. I'd done it on purpose. It's nothing to be ashamed of, she said, patting my shoulder. Happens to everyone eventually. Kevin grunted agreement from behind his newspaper. He was useless in this game, just followed whatever Tara decided. But she was eating it up, taking notes, probably, building her case. She thought she had proof of my declining mind. I played along, dropped my reading glasses twice during dinner, squinted at the newspaper like the print was too small. The more she believed I was slipping, the tighter I could pull the rope around her own neck. I'll drive you to Dr. Peterson's appointment, Tara announced Tuesday morning. It's not safe for you to drive when you're confused. I wasn't confused, and the appointment was routine. But I let her drive, sat in the passenger seat of my own car while she chatted about how responsible she was being. In the waiting room, she hovered over me while I filled out forms. Standard medical history stuff I'd completed 100 times. Do you need help with that? She asked loudly, making sure the receptionist heard. I can manage, I said. But when I paused to remember the exact date of my last physical, she pounced. See? She leaned toward the nurse behind the counter. Do you need me to sign anything? He's not all there anymore. The nurse raised an eyebrow. Sir, are you comfortable filling out your own forms? Yes, I said clearly. Tara's cheeks flushed red. She'd just crossed a line in front of a medical professional, tried to override my autonomy in public. What she thought was evidence of my weakness was actually proof of her greed. That night, I heard voices from the kitchen. Tara and Kevin, whispering over coffee after they thought I'd gone to bed. I crept to the hallway, staying in the shadows. Once he's declared unfit, I get power of attorney, Tara was saying. The house, the bank accounts, the investments. All of it. How much do you think it's worth? Kevin asked. The house alone is worth $300,000. Plus his savings, his life insurance. We're talking about enough money to buy that house in Riverside Heights and still have plenty left over. My blood ran hot, but my lips curled into a smile. She was planning my financial funeral while I was still breathing, counting money that would never touch her hands. I wasn't going to stop her. I'd let her expose herself completely, let her dig the hole as deep as she wanted. She thought she was pulling strings, making clever moves in a game I couldn't understand. But I held the scissors, and when the time came, I'd cut every string she'd attached to my life. I started keeping a folder. A simple manila folder labeled evidence in my neat handwriting, tucked between cookbooks on the kitchen shelf. Every forged signature went in there. Like the delivery receipt for Kevin's new golf clubs, signed Frank Morrison in Tara's flowing script. She'd had them delivered to my address, charged to my account. Every lie got documented. The pharmacy receipt showing she'd picked up my medications and told them I was too confused to come myself. The bank statement showing a withdrawal I'd never made, with security footage I'd requested showing Tara at the ATM with my card. Phone records of her calling my doctor's office, claiming to be my caregiver and asking about my mental state. Each page was another nail. Every piece of evidence showed the same pattern, a woman systematically undermining my independence while positioning herself to take control. I kept the folder neat, organized by date. Added witness statements when neighbors mentioned Tara's comments about my declining condition. The stack grew thicker each week. When the hammer finally came down, it would be quick and heavy. I thought we'd have a nice family dinner, I told Tara on Thursday. Your Aunt Louise and Uncle Pete are coming over Sunday. Her face lit up. Maria's sister and brother-in-law had always been formal with Tara, never quite warm to her after she'd stolen $20 from Louise's purse at Christmas when she was 16. That sounds wonderful, she said. I'll bring dessert. Sunday evening, they arrived promptly at 6. Louise brought flowers for the table. Pete carried a bottle of wine. Good people who'd never asked me for anything. Tara showed up 20 minutes late, flustered and carrying store-bought pie. Sorry, she announced to the table. Frank's been having trouble with directions lately, so I got confused about the time. The room went quiet. Louise and Pete exchanged glances. He's not managing well these days, Tara continued, settling into her chair. I might have to step in soon, help him with daily things. I smiled, asked her to pass the potatoes. Said nothing else. Louise and Pete watched everything. Saw Tara making claims while I acted perfectly normal. They'd seen enough to form their own opinions. Soon, her own family members would be witnesses against her. A week later, my phone rang at 8 in the morning. Tara's voice was sharp with panic. Frank, what did you do? My card was declined at the boutique yesterday, and Kevin's card bounced at the gas station. I stirred my coffee slowly. What cards? The joint account cards. The ones you gave us for emergencies. Oh, I said, as if remembering. I had to close that account. Bank said there were some irregularities. Irregularities? What kind of irregularities? I let the silence stretch. I'm not sure. They used big words. She was breathing hard into the phone. Frank, we need access to funds. The wedding's in 3 months, and we have deposits to make. You'll have to use your own money, I said simply. The old joint account was empty, had been for weeks. Every dollar moved to new accounts she'd never find, never touch. She thought she held control over my finances. She had no idea how deep the cuts already ran. 2 days later, Tara stormed into my kitchen waving papers like battle flags. This is completely unnecessary, she said, slapping documents onto my breakfast table. I'm filing for guardianship. I set down my newspaper and reached for my reading glasses. The petition was professionally typed, full of legal language about my diminished capacity and inability to manage personal affairs. She'd documented everything. My forgotten keys, the repeated questions, the coffee pot incidents. Her version made me sound like a man desperately in need of supervision. You wrote about my forgetfulness, I said, turning pages. Because I care about you. Because someone needs to protect you from yourself. She looked smug, satisfied with her evidence. Like she'd built an airtight case. I folded the papers carefully, tucked them into my shirt pocket. When's the hearing? I asked. 3 weeks. And Frank, her voice softened with fake sympathy. Don't fight this. It's for your own good. My lawyer already had counter-motions filed. The real evidence organized. The stage she thought she'd built for my downfall was exactly where I planned to destroy her. While waiting for the court date, Tara grew bolder. She started opening my mail, sorting it into piles on the counter. bills in one stack, personal letters in another, investment statements in a third. Just helping you stay organized, she explained when I found her reading my bank correspondence. She reorganized my medicine cabinet, claiming I might accidentally double dose. Called my doctor to discuss my memory issues without my permission. Whispered to neighbors at the mailbox about how I was slipping. I let her dig deeper. Each lie added weight to the chain she was forging around her own neck. Mrs. Henderson from next door mentioned that Tara had asked if she'd noticed me struggling with simple tasks. She seems very concerned about you, Mrs. Henderson said. Yes, I agreed. Very concerned. What Mrs. Henderson didn't know was that I'd been recording every conversation, documenting every manipulation. The evidence folder was getting too thick for the kitchen shelf. Arrogance, I'd learned, was the heaviest chain of all. My neighbor Olivia knocked on Tuesday evening while Tara was at her yoga class. Frank, I need to ask you something, and I hope you won't take offense. What's on your mind? Tara mentioned you've been having trouble with your finances. Balancing checkbooks, remembering payments. She asked if I'd noticed any signs. I nodded thoughtfully. What did you tell her? I said I'd keep an eye out. But Frank. She hesitated. You seem fine to me. Sharp as ever. I disappeared into my study for a moment, returned with a sealed envelope. Would you mind holding onto this for me? Just in case. Inside were copies of every account statement, every balance checkbook, every investment record from the past year. All showing perfect financial management, careful planning, methodical record-keeping. Olivia looked surprised but took the envelope. One day soon, I told her. You might be the witness Tara never expected. The courthouse smelled like floor wax and old paper. I wore my best suit, the navy one Maria had helped me pick for her funeral. Seemed appropriate. Tara walked in with her lawyer, heels clicking on marble floors. She dressed for success, tailored jacket, confident smile, leather briefcase. She looked like someone who belonged in courtrooms, someone who understood legal proceedings. Good morning, Frank, she said, kissing my cheek for the judge's benefit. This won't take long. She told the bailiff I might need help understanding the proceedings. Spoke to her attorney loud enough for everyone to hear about my condition. Judge Harrison was younger than I'd expected, maybe 50, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. He looked from me to Tara, then back at me. Mr. Morrison, do you understand why we're here today? Yes, Your Honor. My stepdaughter believes I'm incompetent. The air in the courtroom felt heavy, expectant. Tara's smile was bright as fresh paint. She had no idea the jaws of the trap were about to snap shut. Tara's lawyer presented her case with polished confidence. Photos of my kitchen counter with keys scattered around. Testimony about repeated questions and forgotten appointments. Mr. Morrison frequently asks for directions to places he's visited hundreds of times, the lawyer stated. He's left appliances running, forgotten important dates, and shows clear signs of cognitive decline. Tara took the stand, voice heavy with manufactured concern. I love my stepfather dearly, she said, but he's not safe managing his own affairs anymore. Then my lawyer stood up. Mr. Dillard was 70 himself, sharp as a blade, with 40 years of courtroom experience. Miss Morrison, he said quietly, where exactly were you when these incidents of forgetfulness occurred? Her confident smile flickered. What do you mean? You testified that Mr. Morrison asked for directions to the grocery store. Were you present when this alleged confusion happened? Well, not always directly present, but. So your testimony is based on hearsay? The judge's eyebrow rose. Tara's answers began to stutter, contradict themselves. With each stumble, she buried herself deeper in the hole she'd dug. My turn. I stood slowly, letting them think age had made me fragile. Then I walked to the table and laid out my evidence. Bank records showing every account balance to the penny. Medical reports from 3 different doctors confirming sharp mental acuity. Video footage from security cameras showing me conducting complex business transactions without assistance. Your Honor, I said clearly, I've managed my finances for 54 years. Built a successful business, maintained property, supported my family. I opened the first binder. These are my investment records for the past 5 years. Every decision documented, every transaction profitable. The judge leaned forward, studying the neat columns of numbers. This doesn't look like the work of an incompetent person, he observed. Tara's face went pale as I continued laying out evidence. Her forged signatures, her lies to bank employees, her attempts to access my accounts. Her bright smile had completely faded. But I wasn't finished yet. The real blow was still waiting. Your Honor, I'd like to call Olivia Chun as a witness. Olivia stood from the gallery, carrying the sealed envelope I'd given her weeks earlier. Ms. Chun, how long have you known the petitioner? About 2 years. She's asked me several times if I'd noticed signs of Mr. Morrison's mental decline. And have you noticed such signs? No, Your Honor. Frank is one of the sharpest people I know. She opened the envelope, revealing perfect financial records, detailed planning documents, complex calculations done in my own handwriting. These were prepared by Mr. Morrison last month, she testified. Everything accurate to the penny. Then Nancy Wilson from the bank took the stand. She testified about Tara claiming to be my daughter, asking inappropriate questions about my accounts. Even the nurse from Dr. Peterson's office was called. She described Tara trying to sign medical forms on my behalf, overriding my clearly stated preferences. Each witness painted the same picture, not of a confused old man, but of a greedy woman exploiting family relationships for financial gain. Tara shifted in her seat, lips pressed tight, watching her case crumble. Judge Harrison looked directly at Tara, his voice cutting through the courtroom silence. Miss Morrison, if your stepfather is truly incompetent, how do you explain these perfectly managed accounts? The detailed investment strategies? The complex estate planning? She froze like a deer in headlights. Her mouth opened, closed, no sound coming out. Well, he must have had help, she finally mumbled. From whom? Maybe he got lucky with some decisions? The judge's expression hardened. You're suggesting that an incompetent person accidentally achieved consistent financial success over 5 years. I sat perfectly still in my chair, hands folded, watching the end approach. Everything I'd planned, every piece of evidence I'd gathered, was falling into place. Your Honor, Tara's lawyer interjected, my client is understandably emotional. Your client has wasted the court's time with frivolous accusations, Judge Harrison replied sharply. Tara's face had gone white. She finally understood that she was losing badly. But she still didn't know she'd already lost much more than just this court case. My lawyer stood one final time, holding a thick folder. Your Honor, even if Mr. Morrison were incompetent, which clearly he is not, I'd like to present these documents to the court. He handed over sealed papers to the judge. Trust documents, power of attorney forms, asset transfers. Mr. Morrison took the precaution of securing his estate weeks ago, Mr. Dillard explained calmly. His cousin Michelle Morrison in Detroit now holds power of attorney. His assets are protected in an irrevocable trust. The judge examined the documents, nodding. These appear to be properly executed. Even if the petitioner had succeeded in her guardianship claim, my lawyer continued, she would have gained control over nothing. The estate is already secured. The courtroom went completely silent. You could hear the air conditioning humming in the walls. Tara turned to stare at me, mouth hanging open. Her carefully laid plans, her months of manipulation, her confident assumption that she'd inherit everything, all of it reduced to nothing. She hadn't just lost the case. She'd lost access to every dollar she'd been counting on. That truth was waiting in an envelope at home. Judge Harrison's voice was ice cold as he delivered his ruling. The petition for guardianship is dismissed. Furthermore, I'm deeply concerned about the evidence of forged documents and fraudulent claims presented here today. He looked directly at Tara. Miss Morrison, I'm referring this matter to the district attorney for investigation of possible perjury and elder fraud charges. Tara shot to her feet. This isn't over, she shouted. Her composed mask finally shattered completely. Her heels slammed against the courthouse floor as she stormed out, Kevin trailing behind like a confused puppy. But she didn't know about the clause in the new trust documents. The specific provision I'd had Mr. Dillard include after years of watching her entitled behavior. Any heir who attempted to have me declared incompetent, who tried to manipulate or defraud me, would be permanently cut off from any inheritance. $0. Zero property. Zero consideration. Her greed had triggered her own exile from my family. The truth was waiting in a letter that would arrive at her apartment tomorrow morning. 3 weeks later, I was watering Maria's rose garden when Tara's car screeched into my driveway. She climbed out clutching papers, her face red with rage and tears. You cut me out, she screamed. waving the inheritance documents. Completely out. I turned off the garden hose, set it down carefully. Every penny goes to scholarship funds, she continued, voice cracking. Maria's memorial scholarship, the community college fund, the church building program. Nothing for me. That's right, I said calmly. I'm your daughter. I lived in this house. I took care of you. You tried to steal from me, I replied. You lied to banks, forged my signature, tried to have me declared incompetent so you could take control of money you never earned. She stared at me like I was a stranger. You planned this whole thing. You planned it, Tara. I just refused to be your victim. She had schemed for months, manipulated everyone around her, counted money that was never going to be hers. Her calls would go unanswered now. Her attempts to contact Michelle in Detroit would be blocked. She'd played a game where the only prize for losing was losing everything. She cornered me outside Murphy's diner the following week, her eyes red-rimmed and desperate. You ruined me, she hissed, grabbing my arm. Kevin left. The wedding's off. I can't afford the deposits we made. I looked down at her hand on my sleeve, then back at her face. No, I said quietly. You ruined yourself. The words hit her like cold water. Her grip loosened. I raised you after your mother died, I continued. Paid for your college, your car, your apartment deposits. Gave you everything I could. You owed me that. I owed you love and guidance. You decided you were owed money. She let go of my arm completely, stepping back. The trust documents are final, Tara. Irrevocable. Even if I wanted to change them, I couldn't. She started to say something else, then stopped. For the first time in months, maybe years, she seemed to see me clearly. Not as a confused old man to be managed, but as someone who'd been 3 steps ahead of her the entire time. Someone who'd held the real power all along. She turned and walked away without another word. Now I sit on the front porch Maria and I built together, watching the garden she planted grow wild and free. The scholarship fund grows larger each month, helping kids who actually want to learn instead of just inherit. Family gatherings happen at Louise and Pete's house now. Nobody mentions Tara's name. There's no drama, no arguments about money or inheritance. Just quiet conversation and shared memories. Folks around town still whisper about the courthouse scene, but I don't add details. Nancy at the diner asks how I'm doing. Olivia waves from her garden. Dr. Peterson says my blood pressure's the best it's been in years. The truth is, revenge wasn't about money. It was about letting someone who thought they controlled me discover they'd never held any power at all. Maria's roses are blooming again, red and white and yellow, filling the air with sweetness. I water them every morning, tend them like she taught me, watch them grow stronger each season. Sometimes the best victory is the one you never have to announce. The kind that speaks for itself in the silence where manipulation used to live. The loudest triumph is the one that needs no words at all. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like this video, comment, and smash the subscribe button. Also check out other videos on the channel. Joe's got more interesting stories for you.